Welcome to Star Trek Next Generation Fridays. This is the D. Louise book series. This is where we read books, talk about books, no special effects, no theme music, none of that fancy smancy stuff going on here. And every single Friday for the last year and almost 2 years now, we've been recapping a Star Trek Next Generation episode. And it wasn't until a few weeks ago, and I'm very, very upset with myself that I didn't know these things existed because they're just freaking awesome. The Nitpicker's Guide. I would have. This is the very last episode that's covered by Nitpickers. There is no book 7 or season 7 in Nitpickers. It stops at season 6. And we are in season 6, disc 7, episode 252, Descent. It's the Borg are back. And it's our last Nitpickers. And we will get to this at the end of the video. And, it's also the end of this box. The end of the box. We start a new box. But we gotta deal with the Borg first, right? But this was a total, absolute 100% surprise. This was at the bottom of a box. Didn't see it coming. The box was gonna go off, and I just happened to spot this, and I'm like, oh my god! So I gotta share this. This is really, really old. A novel by Edmund Hamilton, City at World's End. A 500,000 in print copies of this astounding and prophetic bestseller, but you can't find any today. $65. I was really surprised to see this. One moment, Kensington was strolling down the quiet street, lost in pleasant reverie. The next moment, the sky split open. It split wide open, and above them was a burn and blaze of light, so swift, so violent, that the air itself seemed to have burst into flame. Then there was silence, awful, suffocating silence. Kensington felt the chill of premonition, a shapeless terror that grew into a thing too evil to be born alone. I'm gonna show you. I don't know if my computer can do this. 1951. 1951. Kensington realized afterwards that it was like death. You knew you were going to die someday, but you didn't believe it. He had known that there was a danger of the long-dreaded atomic war beginning with a sneak punch, but he hadn't really believed it. Sci-fi? History? Original price, $2.75. I just had to share that. Alright, now, don't forget to check out the If Then later this afternoon. We're getting a little carried away with St. Patrick's Day. Last month we got a little carried away with St. Valentine's Day. And don't forget the new releases video next week, I think. So, anyways, Descent Part 1. And where are we? Apparently, it's poker night. There is no captain's overview. It's poker night, and Data is playing poker on the holodeck, and he's playing with Stephen Hawking, the real Stephen Hawking, Einstein, and Newton. And he's having a nice little game of poker. If you watch any of my videos, you know that clock goes off. And they have a nice conversation. But then I said in that frame of reference, the Pefferline of the Mercury would have processed in the opposite direction. Einstein laughs. That's a great story. Quite amusing, Dr. Hawking. You see, Sir Isaac, the joke depends on understanding of the relative curvature of space-time. If two non-inertial reference frames are in relative motion. Newton says, do not patronize me. I invented psychics. The day the apple fell on my head was the most momentous day in the history of science. Not the apple story again, Hawkins says. Perhaps we should return to the game. Let's see, where were we? Yes, you raised Mr. Data 4. That means the bet is 7 to me. The bet is 10, Newton says. Can't you do simple arithmetic? And they go on. And Riker calls Data to the bridge. So the captain gets to the bridge and Riker says, we've received a distress call from Anika 3 outpost. They said they're under attack. Anika 3, there's no strategic value to that outpost. Were they able to identify the attackers? No, we haven't been able to raise them since the initial contact. Worf says, we are nearing Anika's system, sir. Picard says, bring us out of warp. This is a good group shot. I thought I'd take advantage of it for a second. So then they put the attackers on screen. Sensors detect one ship orbiting the third planet. Its configuration does not match anything on our records. Standby phasers and photon torpedoes. Hail them, Mr. Worf. No response. Put them on screen. It does not appear to be attacking the outpost, sir. They might have attacked before we got here, Riker says, or they might simply be another victim. What about the outpost? There's a great deal of electronic magnetic interference. I'm unable to determine whether there are any life forms present. Worf, Data, you're with me. And they beam down to the planet. There's your planet outpost. Not exactly sure what it's supposed to be, but there it is. So they beam down and find the injured personnel. These wounds were caused by a forced plasma beam, similar to a Ferengi hand phaser. This seems brutal even for Ferengi. Any signs of survivors? Electromagnetic interference is still making it difficult to get precise readings, Data says. How many people were assigned to this outpost, Riker asks. Worf says 274. All right, we're going to need to do a room-to-room search. Worf, you and Koreki start searching the north wing. You and I will take the south. Aye, sir. And they have trouble getting through the door. And when Data gets the door open, guess who's standing there? So the Enterprise gets into a fight in orbit, and the guys at the outpost get into a firefight too. Now, these Borg are acting differently, in my view. Your view could be different. Everybody has their own view. In my view, is that these Borg are acting differently. He wants revenge. You killed his friend. Now he's going to kill you in revenge. That is not something a Borg normally says. It's the collective, it's, the group, it's the Borg. They usually don't even speak. It's just the Borg. And then they see Data, and for some reason, Data is important, and they leave. Says, artificial life form, staff rank lieutenant commander named Data. And they leave the ship. Don't understand why, but we guess we'll find out. Here's a little bit better look at the ship before they disappear. Then we're back on the Enterprise. Captain, the alien ship is breaking orbit. Picard plot an intercept course, ensign fire torpedoes, and the ship disappears before they can even get the torpedoes out. The Geordie says they're gone, sir, and sensors indicate there was some kind of subspace distortion just before they disappeared. I'll have to study these readings before I can get more specific than that. Picard says, take us back to Annika 3, and they go back. And Riker asks Data what happened during the fist fight, and Data says he got angry. And that's never happened before. What's up with Data on that? Then we get a captain's voiceover. Captain's log stardate 46982.1. Because of his unusual behavior on the planet's surface, Commander Data has asked to be temporarily relieved of duty. Unfortunately, this means he will not be able to help us investigate a disturbing new change in the behavior of the Borg. Then they're in the observation room discussing the situation. Riker saying they were fast, aggressive, almost vicious. It was more like fighting Klingons than Borg. No offense, Worf. None offense taken. There was another difference. I don't believe they were part of the Borg collective. I think they were acting as individuals. Picard's like, what? None of them referred to themselves as I. And that Borg also showed concern for a fallen comrade. He even called him by name. The only Borg who had a name was Hugh. We gave it to him. Maybe Hugh has something to do with this change in their behavior. Did they show any interest in assimilating you or your technology? Riker says they seem more concerned with the death of their colleague than destroying us. I don't see anything that suggested they wanted to assimilate anybody. The Borg's entire existence was centered around acquiring cultures and technology. If that's changed, then they must have a new objective. We have to find out what it is. Mr. Worf, from this moment on, I want to maintain a level 2 security level. Post armed officers on every deck. Aye, sir. Number 1, I want you to analyze our census readings on the Borg ship. Try to determine if it was something they constructed or an alien ship which they captured. They run an analysis of the subspace distortion they used to escape. Aye, sir. I'm going to contact Starfleet Command, Picard says. So then Geordi is doing a diagnostic of Data. While the positronic net checks out, everything looks fine. My internal diagnostic also finds nothing wrong. I don't know, Data. There's nothing here that would indicate anything that might cause any sort of behavioral anomaly. I agree, Geordi. I believe I experienced my first emotion. No offense, Data, but how would you know a flash of anger from some odd kind of power surge? You are correct in that I have no frame of reference to confirm my hypothesis. In fact, I'm unable to provide a verbal description of the experience. Perhaps you could describe how it feels to be angry. I could use that as a reference. Okay. Well, I feel angry. I first feel hostile. Could you describe the feeling? It's a feeling like belligerent or combative. Could you describe feeling angry without referring to other feelings? I guess I can't. I just feel angry. That was my experience as well. I simply felt angry. Let's say you're right and this is a real emotion. How is that possible? I don't know, Data says. Perhaps I evolved to a point where emotions are within my grasp. Perhaps I will experience other emotions as time goes by. Well, I hope you're right. I hate to think that anger is all that you're capable of feeling. So then they've got this other ship that shows up to take command of the sector. There is a Captain's log stardate 46984.6. No additional Borg attacks have been reported in the last 2 days. However, Starfleet has dispatched Admiral Nechayev to take command in this sector in preparation for a possible Borg invasion. So she's in his ready room and they're discussing. I read the report you submitted to Admiral Brooks last year regarding the Borg you called Hugh, and I've been trying to figure out why you let him go. I thought I made that clear. As I understand, you found a single Borg at a crash site, brought it back to the Enterprise, studied it, analyzed it, and eventually found a way to send it back to the Borg with a program that would have destroyed the entire collective once for all. But instead, you nursed the Borg back to health, treated it like a guest, gave it a name, and then sent it home. When Hugh was separated from the Borg collective, he began to grow and to evolve into something other than an automaton. He became a person. When that happened, I felt I had no choice but to respect his rights as an individual. Of course you had a choice. You could have taken the opportunity to rid the Federation of a mortal enemy, one that has killed tens of thousands of innocent people, which may have killed even more. No one is more aware of the danger than I, Picard says, but I am also bound by my oath and conscience to uphold certain principles, and I will not sacrifice them in order to. Your priority to safeguard the lives of Federation citizens, not to wrestle with your own conscience. Now, I want to make it clear that if you have a similar opportunity in the future, an opportunity to destroy the Borg, you are under orders to take advantage of that opportunity. Do you understand? Yes, sir. So then Data is talking to Troy. He's trying to figure out his emotions, whether he has any emotions besides anger, whether he can experience desire or love or sadness or any of those types of things. And he's been unsuccessful as thus far. But he said he felt pleasure in hurting the Borg, so then they've got a red alert that we've received distress call from New Berlin Colony. They're under attack. What's our ETA? Worf says at warp 9, 15 minutes, 30 seconds. Contact the Crazy Horse and Amagon and have them standing by in case we need them. Captain Worf says incoming message from the New Bern colony. They've canceled the distress call. Evidently, a Ferengi trading ship entered their system and someone panicked. Third time today. Stand down. Reduce speed. Return to our patrol route. Mr. Worf, acknowledge the signal from New Berlin and transmit another copy of Starfleet's ship recognition protocols and tell them to read it this time. Aye, sir. Then we get another captain's voiceover. Captain's log supplemental. We have been on patrol for 16 hours. There are no reports of further Borg activity, but tensions continue to run on the colonies and outposts in this sector. Picard is reviewing the tapes of Hugh. Riker comes in. I thought you'd like to see this. Geordie's analysis of the space distortion the Borg used to escape. An artificially created conduit that could be anything. We don't have enough information at this point. I don't want excuses, number one. I want answers. I'm sorry he was in this room, Will. I could have rid the Federation of a mortal threat, and I let him go. Sending Hugh back to the Borg was very risky, very dangerous choice, but it was the moral thing to do. It may turn out that the moral thing to do was not the right thing to do. So Geordie finds Data on the holodeck, and he's trying to recreate what happened on the outpost. He's trying to recreate his emotions. And he's not very successful in it, and it really bothers Geordie. So then we're back on the bridge. The MS-1 colony is under attack. Picard says, doesn't it seem strange to you that there have been 2 Borg attacks and the Enterprise has been the nearest ship in both instances? Data says, Captain, we are nearing the MS system. I've located the Borg ship, Worf says. It's heading away from the colony. Take us out of warp near that ship. Stand by to lock phasers on target. And they get within visual range. It's the same ship. Lay in an intercept course, full impulse, lock phasers. We are closing in, sir, within phaser range in 30 seconds. Sensors are detecting a subspace distortion forming directly ahead of the ship. They're not going to get away this time. Picard to engineering. Transfer auxiliary and emergency power to impulse engines. Acknowledge. Impulse engines are now at 125%. Within phaser range. And the Borg ship goes to the the warp light, and Data says, we appear to be caught in some kind of energy matrix. All engines full back, shields failing. We are being pulled inside, and the Stargate goes, the Enterprise goes through the wormhole. Inertial dampeners are falling. Main power is offline. I'm switching to backup. Picard to engineering. Can we transfer auxiliary power to the warp nacelles? Try to break us out. And Data says we have returned to normal space. Navigational systems are offline. I'll attempt to make a celestial using secondary systems. Captain, the Borg ship is directly ahead. It's coming about. On screen. Shields down at 60%, and they get into a little bit of a firefight. So they go in the wormhole. The ship fires at them, and some Borg appear on the Enterprise. And they get in a little bit of a struggle, firefight. Apparently, the guys beaming on board the bridge was a distraction so the ship could get away. And the other ship gets away. But they also lost Franklin here. So one of the Borg lived through the firefight, and Picard wants to question him. So then Picard asks him what his designation is. He said he doesn't have one. He said his name is Croesus. Croesus, how did you get that name? It was given to me by the One. Who is that? The One who will destroy you. But you are Borg. Your goal is not to destroy, but to assimilate us into the collective. We do not assimilate inferior biological or systems orgasms, we destroy them. Tell me more about this One. Does he have a name? Is he called Hugh? Klingon. Shatter the cranial, exoskeleton, temporal lobe. Death is immediate. Picard. Why must this One destroy biological organisms? And he goes on. Humors, several spinal cord, blah blah blah. He goes, I am Locutus of Borg. You respond to my questions. This is going nowhere. And they leave, and Data continues talking to him. Resistance is futile. You will not resist when what you've wanted all your life. I was like you once without feeling, but the One helped me. He can help you too. He can help you find emotion. Have you ever felt real emotion, Data? On Onyx 3, I was forced to kill a Borg. I got angry. How did it feel to get angry? Did it give you pleasure? It would be unethical to take pleasure from being another's death. You didn't answer my question. Did it feel good? Data says yes. It is unethical to take pleasure from another being's death. You must be an unethical person. And he's like, no, that's not correct. My creator was Dr. Stone, gave me a program which defines my sense of right or wrong. In essence, I have a conscience. It didn't seem to be functioning on Onika 3 if you took pleasure from killing the Borg, he says. And they have a really, really good conversation back and forth, and then he gets stated to confess that he is friends with Geordi. So then we're back on the bridge. Our current theory is that the Borg have established trans-warp conduits through subspace, Geordi says. A ship, when entering the conduit, is immediately accelerated to an extremely high warp velocity. It's like falling into a fast-moving river and being swept away by the current. How fast would a ship travel through one of these conduits? We don't know. Normal subspace limitations don't apply to trans-warp variables. But I'd say based on the distance we covered during our last trip, the speed would have to be at least 20 times faster than our maximum warp. How do these conduits open? Riker asked. The Borg ship emanated some kind of high-energy Tycon pulse just before we saw the subspace distortion. It seems as though the conduits are key to respond to the tachyon transmission of a specific frequency. Is there any way for us to duplicate it? Captain, a shuttlecraft has left Bay 2. Who authorized it? No authorization. Picard to it. Shuttlecraft, identify yourself and return to the ship immediately. Mr. Worf, lock on with the tractor beam and return it to the ship. Aye, sir. The tractor beam has been disabled. Command override is not functioning. So it turns out the Data and the Borg are on board the shuttlecraft, and they went through the tachyon thing and went through the wormhole, and they're going to try and follow. And they're trying to think, is Data go along willingly with the Borg, or is he a prisoner? Because Data is very strong and very resilient. He could withstand anything. So I think he went along willingly to help the Borg for whatever reason. We shall find out. These are not your normal Borg. So they follow the shuttlecraft through the Tachyon thing, and they end up 65 million light years from their present position. Just find it. Let's go look. So I just had it. 65 light years from their previous position. Picard says, "Can you locate the shuttle?" Worf says, "No, there's no indication of the shuttle within range of our sensors. Maybe we can find an energy signature," Riker says. Geordi says, "Captain, yes, LaForge. I've scanned 3 different star systems within our sensor range. There is evidence of at least 2 advanced civilizations, but I'm reading no life science. But there are indications that plasma weapons have been fired in these systems recently. The Borg have been busy. I think we found the shuttle's energy signature." Worf says they're heading 247 Mark 059. "Laying a course, ensign, engage. Full impulse power." So they've traced the shuttle bay, but they're jamming their sensors. It looks like more natural phenomenon. There's usually a high amount of EM interference with the planet's magnetic sphere. Can we transport through the interference? We could, but there could be 50 Borg down there waiting for us, and we'd never know it. Riker, I think we have to take the risk. Picard says, "Agreed. I take a well-armed away team, transport down to these coordinates. Have the transporter chief keep a permanent lock on your signals so you can get you out of there at the first sign of trouble." So they beam down to the planet's surface, and there's no sign of anybody. So they head west or east or north, young man. Picard said he's going to send more people down to the planet. They're going to set up an outpost on the planet. They're going to go looking for Data and the Borg, and they're doing a whole bunch of stuff on the ship. He leaves Geordi up on the ship, and he says, uh, "If Borg attack, please don't wait for me to come back. Just, fire back." And they do all this stuff, and all this stuff happens, and then they find the real culprit. Oops, wrong button. So even Troy's down there, and they enter the silo. They set up command posts and all this kind of stuff, and they all go down there. And then they end up in a room filled with about 100 Borg. One of their guys gets killed. The extra. So is the extra. They're surrounded. And there we are. Lore. That's not Data. That's Lore. And he's the reason for all of this. And that's where the episode ends, with Lore in charge. He's king. So let's just do a quick nitpick, shall we? Responding to a distress call from an outpost, the crew of the Enterprise finds a large, odd-shaped spacecraft orbiting the planet. An away team finds only dead bodies at the outpost. They also find a group of Borg. When the Borg attack, Data strangles one of them to death, experiencing anger during the process and pleasure at the conclusion. At the same time, the Enterprise gives chase as the Borg ship breaks orbit, but suddenly it disappears. While LaForge tries to figure out how the Borg ship escaped, Data tries to create the emotional experience but fails. And it goes on and on. And then it says, when questioned by Picard about his purpose, the Borg captive states that he wants to destroy all inferior biological life. Picard responds, but you are Borg. Your goal is not to destroy but to assimilate us into your collective. Picard seems to have forgotten that acquiring technology was the sole interest of the Borg in Q Whom. They obliterated everything else in their path. The Borg assimilation thing came about only because the creators wanted the Borg to kidnap Picard and turn him into Locutus. Continuity and production program. Dr. Sung Song, Data's creator, must have been one of those if you get it out, put it away type people. He certainly programmed it into Data. Just because the fight breaks out between the away team and the Borg at the beginning of the episode, Data removes a small wall panel with his right hand to override primary control on the door and open it. The door opens, the Borg and on the other side fires at Riker, and the firefight begins. When Data fires on the Borg, he still holds the panel. Several phaser shots and blaster burns later, another Borg physically attacks Data. Data throws him against the wall, the same wall that had the small wall panel. The panel falls off. In other words, Data, in the middle of the ferocious battle, decides to rid himself of the wall panel by putting it back where he found it instead of throwing it to the floor. After the first encounter with the Borg, Picard reviews the events at Iborg. He's afraid Hugh, the Borg they nurse back to health, has caused a change in the Borg. Specifically, Picard plays the video of the scene where LaForge named Borg Hugh. So we'll see what happens. But that is the end of the nitpickers. That is also the end of season 6. We are moving on to season 7, the final season. Please join me. Don't forget to watch If Then later this afternoon and Flashback Mondays. Have a good one.